What's going on with the truckers? I've had a lot of trucking subscribers ask me to talk about this topic because it is extremely important that we talk about this. And here's the thing, don't think that when something like this big and impactful happens, that it doesn't trickle down and hurt America. It does. And what is America? Trucking. So fuel prices could go up, all sorts of stuff. So let's get into this and let's talk about why does Russia feel that they needed to do this? And full disclosure, my heart goes out to Ukraine. I mean, anyone that's fighting for their freedom and country, they are rightfully so. But where did this really come from? And Russia is really blaming America. And it started in 1990. Russia says that they claim that the United States had failed to uphold a promise that NATO would not expand into Eastern Europe, a deal made during the 1990 negotiations between the West and the Soviet Union over German unification.
It was repeatedly highlighted that the West broke a pledge to not expand NATO to the east towards Russia's borders. An agreement between the US, Britain, France and Germany was recorded in a 1991 document on guaranteeing security in Eastern Europe.
Here's the thing. NATO secretary says that there was never a promise or anything that was written down and that America would never make that promise.
Truth. Such a promise has never been made. There has never been such a behind-the-scenes deal. This is simply not true.
This is where things get extremely interesting because I was young in the 1990s. And so here is a leak video of Bill Bradley. If you do not know who this man is, he served 3 terms as the Democratic U.S. Senator from New Jersey from 1979 to 1997. And in this summit conference, he actually speaks about the situation where he actually confirms that there was a deal, a promise that NATO would not expand eastward.
I think that right now we're confronted with something that potentially could have been avoided. And the fundamental blunder that the United States made in the mid-'80s, late '80s, early '90s, was the expansion of NATO. I mean, here we'd won the Cold War. We'd won the Cold War. And you then had people saying, well, now what are we going to do with NATO? Oh, well, I don't know. It's a bureaucracy. It works. What are we going to do with it? And so then the idea of expanding NATO. And the problem with it is this. During the negotiation for the reunification of Germany, Gorbachev and Jim Baker says to Gorbachev, in the treaty it says, no NATO troops in what was then East Germany. In the discussions, and I had this conversation with Gorbachev last summer, he told me very directly, the conversation with Jim Baker, the question was, Baker saying, NATO, if you agree to reunification of Germany in NATO, NATO will not expand 1 inch further east, which is what I went to see Gorbachev to confirm, because I care so much about this. Is this true? Now, the interpretation on the American side, Scowcroft says, well, he misinterpreted. Baker, I haven't quite pinned down. But Gorbachev says very specifically, he said, if you expand 1 inch further, if you allow reunification, Germany and NATO, NATO will not expand 1 inch further east. And then Gorbachev told me, Kohl told him the same thing, which was new information, right? So the first Bush keeps his promise. You assume it's a promise. They talk about partnership for peace, and Russians kind of like that idea. And then Clinton comes in. What's the early thing he does in his first term? He expands NATO.
And all of us together must help the Bosnian people to finish the job of bringing a lasting peace to their country. If you think about where we were just a year ago in Bosnia, not to mention 2 years ago, not to mention 1995, no one would have believed we would be here today. It would not have happened had it not been for NATO, the Partnership for Peace allies, the Russians, all of those who have come there together and joined hands to end the bloodiest conflict in Europe since the Second World War. Now we have to finish what America started 4 years ago, welcoming Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic into our alliance. If you look around at who's in the room today, you can see that they are more than willing to be a good partner. They will make NATO stronger.
I'm definitely not trying to say that Russia is in the right for this, but it's starting to sound like there were some broken promises. So here's the expansion map of NATO after 1997. So in the blue, you can see that all the countries are very far from Russia. But after 1997, Bill Clinton expands and is getting pretty close to Russia. And so I think that is the power struggle there. You know, even Bill Bradley says they might not understand politics per se, but they do understand tanks. Now, recently, just last year, Putin Vladimir actually put his military on the boundaries of Ukraine and asked Biden to pull back on the application for Ukraine to join NATO. And that is where Biden says, you know, applying for NATO is an open door policy. Any country can, as long as they do it under the guidelines of NATO. And so you know that really pissed off Russia right there.
Why expand NATO? And I've been rereading, because I've been thinking of writing something about this, Strobe Talbot's article in Foreign Affairs about why expand NATO, and you read it and you say, huh, that's a reason? You know? And last summer again, I'm talking to a number of people that I've known for many years, two guys who ran for president in Russia in 1996 and 2000. And you know, one of them says to me, I'm out campaigning in the Urals. Somebody comes up to me and says, this is 96. Why are the Americans expanding NATO? Isn't that a military alliance? And they said, well, yeah, but it's a military alliance. And the guy said, the politician said, Russians might not be able to understand puts and calls, but they certainly understand tanks.
So as all this is happening, Russia and the world is paying attention to what America is doing. And last year, America pulled out of Afghanistan.
My fellow Americans, the war in Afghanistan is now over. I'm the fourth president who has faced the issue of whether and when to end this war.
Now, even though America was happy that the troops were pulling out, they criticized Biden on the mismanagement of how he pulled out. And so I believe that Putin Vladimir looked at this and said, this is a good opportunity to take over Ukraine because, for one, they're not a part of NATO, and for two, they saw signs of weakness in the way that we mismanaged that. And so they don't believe that America would jump in to help Ukraine, especially because as of now, even though they do have an application, they are not in NATO as a member. So the closest thing that America and the rest of the other 29 members could do is sanction Russia. And as you can see from the map again, that's it. They could cut them off as much as possible. But I'm telling you, there's really nothing they can do because as of now, Ukraine's not in NATO. So when people are asking me, is America going to go? Is it going to be a World War III? What's going on? Honestly, I think there's going to be deeper sanctions, but it's not going to happen because the rule book plays. They cannot do anything about this. Mother Truckers, comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are. But this is definitely tragic, and I just wanted to update you guys because we are about trucking, but definitely things happening in the world will affect trucking and our economy in America as well. So let me know if you see what I'm saying. These are just facts that I have, but overall, you know, I pray for the people of Ukraine, and I wish them safety and health, and you know, I'll keep you guys updated.
Putin chose this war, And now he and his country will bear the consequences.